legendary campaign difficulty and very hard battle difficulty. Two difficulties that can make for a far superior campaign experience. Welcome everyone, Christine here with the discussion about Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. And in this video I want to talk about difficulty and how playing on the highest possible difficulty settings can make for a much better campaign. Now don't expect me to be pushing the argument that smashing your head against a brick wall is going to make for a fun experience. It will not, necessarily. But setting the difficulty to the highest possible level in Warhammer 3 does bring with it a significant number of benefits throughout the course of your campaign. It is in fact quite very possible on the highest difficulty to complete a campaign in a shorter time period than you would on a lower difficulty. And there's a pretty good reason for it. So let's go over the situation. First off, in terms of campaign difficulty, what does Legendary do? What does Very Hard do? What does campaign difficulty in general do? Well, it affects the availability of AI resources. Anything from construction costs to growth, upkeep, attrition, casualty replenishment, the AI is going to get in a fairly significant way. So this is why Castalton, even though he's not really controlling that much territory, that's well developed. Okay, to be fair, I gave Castalton a decent amount of territory, but it's not like he's developed it very well. But it's through AI cheats, specifically the upkeep cheats, on Legendary, that Castalton is able to maintain so many troops like Akshinas, Streltsy over here. Oh, the Dervishes certainly are cheap. The Akshina and the Streltsy, not necessarily quite as much. And the Warriors of Chaos, Marauder, horsemen with throwing axes, not really quite as much. And he actually had an extra army that he lost because, well, Trog decided to be Trog. So that was one of the benefits. Now, why is this important for you as the player to know? Well, if the AI is building settlements that are higher level, and keep in mind, I had to beat the crap out of Castalton, so maybe he's not the best example. Let's take a look at Karl Franz. But if the AI is building settlements at the higher level, so tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 settlements, you can see Altdorf is very quickly going to become a tier 4 settlement in this campaign, then that means that when you take over these settlements and you defeat the armies these settlements produce, because obviously the AI is going to build bigger and larger armies as a result of this. So over here, Karl Franz has 2 entire sacks. He's got a third on the way. He might even have potentially a 4th somewhere, although he doesn't. Actually, he did have a 4th. I destroyed it. So when you're taking down the AI settlements that are higher level, that are available early on in a campaign, you're going to get more experience, you're going to get more money, you're going to be able to achieve greater campaign success with that money and with the experienced troops that you have in your army. Experience that is only gained by fighting more troops during the course of a campaign. So for instance, over here, I have the ability of getting things like, I have the ability over here of running around with an army of rank 6 Chaos Warriors of Nurgle, be it with grey weapons or just sword and board, some Forsaken, and also some horsemen, which I am actually just going to turn over here. I don't quite have the ability of getting Chaos Knights with lances, but I certainly have a good ranking on Festus, on his army, and mind you, this campaign has not necessarily been played to its fullest potential. Mistakes were made, because I wasn't necessarily interested in playing a serious campaign, I just wanted to get to a certain point. So the AI having more resources gives you more resources. It means when you're trading away territory to the AI, which is what I did with Castalten here, you get more money as the player in this situation. I've done trades for tens of thousands of gold for certain settlements, courtesy of old AI cheats. So that is one of the significant benefits on Legendary. Now, is there necessarily that big of a difference in terms of campaign benefits between Legendary and Very Hard? A bit, not necessarily all that much. It has to be pointed out that Legendary does have its downsides. But there is a bit of a difference, and I feel it's enough for me to justify playing on Legendary as opposed to Very Hard. But the downside of Legendary is, well, there's a couple of them. First off, on Legendary, though you do get this on pretty much any difficulty, but except normal and easy, but on most difficulties in the game, you are going to get the difficulty level modifier is -8 on Legendary. That's the first downside, and arguably the worst of it. The other downside is that you only have one save. Now the problem with only having one save is that when you go to attack, and it's an autosave, when you go to attack a settlement, I'm not sure how much of this is going to be taken in by the video, but it's going to stutter, it's going to lag. That's because the autosave is playing a role there. Because every time you start a turn, every time you end a turn, every time, and yes, just before the AI does all its turn, it turns, it autosaves as you're clicking that and turn buttons. Once the AI has done all its turns, it autosaves again. Autosaves at the beginning of a battle, at the end of a battle, or when you're going in a siege scenario like this. Constantly autosaving, constantly degrading your performance during the middle of a campaign. Ends up being quite annoying. That's one, that is a really big downside. That and the public order modifier. And of course, AI having more resources makes AI more dangerous, if the AI is willing to use those resources. This brings me to the second point, battle difficulty. Not the AI stats modifier, the battle difficulty, which ranges, of course, from very hard to easy. Now, this is going to be a crucial point that a lot of people don't understand. What does battle difficulty do? Well, one of the things that's pretty obvious is that battle difficulty affects AI behavior in battles. Crank this up to very hard, the AI is going to try and be more competent, quote unquote, than on a lower difficulty. In reality, it's not necessarily going to work out that way, and people have reported that if you set it on normal, the AI can actually achieve better results in battles than they necessarily would on very hard. But from a campaign perspective, battle difficulty does have a significant effect on the campaign map. So if we go over here, you saw the result of the battle before. Let me just go over this again. This would be a Pyrrhic victory, as you can see with these two armies. But if I lower the battle difficulty to easy, then go again in the battle, you can see it turns from a Pyrrhic victory into a decisive victory. So the battle difficulty you choose doesn't just affect the battles, it affects the auto-resolve. Now previously it was the campaign difficulty affected the auto-resolve result, then people got really annoyed because it was a load of bullshit. Because people might play on a higher campaign difficulty, but would not necessarily play on a high battle difficulty. So people got really annoyed, creative assembly changed. I think the change was for the better, but you end up in the situation where your battle difficulty dictates your auto-resolve result. Now, this would be fine. You could argue, well, I'll just play on normal then, right? Normal is pretty decent in terms of dot resolve. Though I have to say, dot resolve is not particularly kind even on normal. Easy, like genuinely so. My personal performance in battles, like in a battle like this, is somewhere between easy and normal. Many times in smaller battles, smaller engagements against garrisons, is significantly better than easy. Like against a no-name garrison, auto resolve will do a lot of damage. But here's the problem. And a lot of people will do this because they hate fighting. Like, there's a lot of people that do actually hate fighting a bunch of the meaningless battles just against garrisons. Because settlements get an auto-resolve benefit. But here's the problem about battle difficulty. It doesn't just govern auto-resolve and battle behavior. It governs AI campaign behavior. Yes. This is incredibly stupid. I personally feel AI behavior on the campaign map should be dictated by the campaign difficulty. Auto-resolve? Okay, tie it to the battle difficulty, or make it its own separate meter. Could I please have an auto-resolve that's not exceptionally painful? That would be it. Like, I would personally make a separate meter for the auto-resolve result. But here's a big problem with this, and why I strongly recommend playing on very hard battle difficulty. If you set the battle difficulty to low, what you're really doing on easy, on normal, is you're making the AI more passive. Battle difficulty affects the aggression level of the AI on the campaign map. So if you crank it up on legendary or any difficulty, if you crank it up to very hard, the AI is generally going to use its resources better. It's going to attack more with its army. It's going to use its armies more aggressively. Consider this situation. This is unmodded. The only thing I have as a mod is Toggle Fog of War, just for me to show you the campaign map for the sake of this video. But consider this situation. Vlad has moved into Stirland and taken Talabecland as well. Azag marched in and defeated Draika, but then got defeated by Ungrim in turn. I personally marched all the way over here in Kislev to beat Kostaltin and then hopefully to make Frat my vassal. Katrin, well, she also decided to join in the Thunderdome that's unfolding over here in Talabayam and in Ostermark to some extent. Karl Franz, he confederated Talabayam before Vlad wiped them out. And yes, he is at war with... he was at war with Talabayam. I'm not quite sure how that unfolded. Or I think Vlad declared war on Talabayam, and Talabayam, as a last resort, confederated into Karl Franz, and now I'm at war with Karl Franz. That is a lot of fun. But you end up seeing mega factions forming. You see Morafiol that she's achieved over here, which is actually a fairly decent level of progress that she has certainly succeeded in this campaign, though maybe Katep has a couple of words to say on that. Ostanka is absolutely finished, though, in this particular campaign. Ali Fanar is also on his last legs. Malekith is doing Malekith things. Hellebrand being a powerhouse, as she usually is, though I guess, I suppose Valkia is going to have a word to say about that, or maybe she will not. Point is, if you play on a higher battle difficulty, the AI will generally achieve more. I mean, look at Grimgor. If you play on a lower battle difficulty, then one of the things you will notice is the AI being more passive. In particular, if you play on legendary, for instance, very hard battle difficulty, Draika will take Beckhaven relatively quickly in her campaign, or she should most of the time. Sometimes there are exceptions to this because of AI faction potential, but most of the time she'll take the Ostermark very quickly. But if you lower the difficulty, she won't, because it makes the AI more passive. It makes the AI less willing to attack, especially against provincial capitals. So my point is that if you play on the highest difficulty, you better get a better AI. That's really it. You get the better AI. Yes, the cheats can be ridiculous, but even so, just messing around the battle difficulty, I would argue, like, even if you're someone that's playing on normal, I would strongly advise playing with a higher battle difficulty. You don't have to deal with the stats. The one major downside, of course, is that if you increase the battle difficulty, you will have to fight a lot more battles manually, which can be good in some cases, but the problem is the worst auto-resolve results you'll get are against any kind of settlement. And let me be frank, those are not interesting battles. I don't care what kind of garrison the structure is in a settlement. There's no way a settlement garrison like this one of 9 units is going to do any real damage to Festus barreling with 20 units towards them. But in auto-resolve, they might just do so. Or this 14-man garrison. Even though, again, in a real battle, they would be swept aside. That's the annoying thing. Settlements do have an auto-resolve benefit on any difficulty, but especially on a very hard battle difficulty. So it's a major downside. However, I personally don't really consider it a proper campaign experience to play with a passive AI. There are some mods that might be able to fix this, that kind of replicate this behavior so you don't have to play with the very hard battle difficulty. But from my point of view, in the vanilla game, it does offer the best experience in the game. Even if you decide not to give the AI extreme cheats in terms of campaign, because yes, the attrition, casualty replenishment growth can be a bit ridiculous. Absolutely. But just the AI using its resources more effectively by being more aggressive is such a game changer. Questine here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.